Hi, in this video I am going to rank Pink Floyd's 15 studio albums from least to best. Now these are just my own personal favorites. I'm not saying definitively that this is in order of least to greatest. I'm just saying in terms of my own personal preferences, this is the list that I have come up with. I'm going to start with number 15. That is going to be Endless River. Number of reasons why I rank this one so low. Number one, it's got no Roger Waters involvement. There's no real song, so to speak. These are essentially tracks that were discarded or instrumentals that were never developed into complete songs during the Division Bell sessions. I think it was more a tribute to Rick Wright than actually meant to be a true Pink Floyd studio album. It was really, for me, a missed opportunity because they could have, David Gilmour could have swallowed his ego and his pride and could have invited Roger Waters to be a part of maybe turning this into something that was more of a full band effort, but he didn't. And it's just, to me, I just don't care for it all that much. It's boring, I feel, at spots. I mean, it's pleasant enough, but it's just not something that I can actively listen to. I could throw it on in the background and, that would be fine, but it is just not anywhere near what I would consider a Pink Floyd album. Number 14, I'm going to go with Uma Guma, and technically it's half a live album, half a studio album, but just the studio tracks, I give them credit for trying to be a little experimental, trying to do something that was, I guess, for each of them, reflective of their own personal taste, and sort of like the Kiss solo albums, except each Pink Floyd member got, half of an album side. But for the most part, it just doesn't work. I really don't listen to this album that much. They're like David Gilmour's The Narrow Way, I think is okay, but Sisyphus parts of that I can find some enjoyment in, but the bulk of it I just don't care for all that much. Number 13, I'm going to go with Momentary, Lapse of Reason, the first post-Roger Waters Pink Floyd album. And nothing too flawed with this album. I mean, essentially, it's a David Gilmour solo album, much in the same way the argument could be made that the final cut was a Roger Waters solo album. I really like Signs of Life. I like Learning to Fly. On the Turning Away is okay. Most of side 2, I just don't think is all that terrific. I think Pink Floyd has done much better. I think on the Division Bell, they did much better. So I enjoy side 1. Side 2 is hit or miss for me. Number 12, I'm going to go with Obscured by Clouds. Pink Floyd did the soundtrack to the film Love Ali, which I think maybe 1% of Pink Floyd fans have actually seen. I'm not one of them, so I can't speak to how the music fits into the film itself. But it's an interesting album. There are some really great songs here. Free 4 is a great one. Childhood's End is another good track. What's the Deal? I think are enjoyable. And they really kind of pave that bridge between metal and Dark Side of the Moon. But just the instrumentals, I mean, I can appreciate Pink Floyd trying to get into world music a little bit and some different sonic textures, but I don't know. I rank it a little bit lower. Not a bad album, but just not one that I reach for all that much when I'm going to put on a Pink Floyd album. Number 11, Saucerful of Secrets, the last album to feature any musical contributions from Syd Barrett. Certain moments of it I enjoy. I don't think it's as solid as Piper at the Gates of Dawn, David Gilmour's first involvement with Pink Floyd. I do like Jug Band Blues. I think it's quirky enough. I think it's totally Syd Barrett, and kind of an interesting way for them to end the album. I like Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. I think that's a pretty cool, interesting track. And other parts of it are all right. It's just not my favorite. I'm going to rank it just, I think it's where it belongs at number 11. I would not put it in my top 10. So speaking of my top 10, number 10 is going to be The Final Cut. And I'm not one of those Pink Floyd fans that think The Final Cut is the worst thing they ever did or who hate on Final Cut. As a sequel to The Wall, it's certainly disappointing, but I can appreciate that Roger Waters was trying to put together some kind of cohesive concept album, which followed on the heels of The Wall, sort of the aftermath of war, and not only how does it affect the people who survived the war, but some of the trauma that they're dealing with and the implications of getting involved in another war. So I can appreciate it on that level. I'm a big Roger Waters fan, so it doesn't bother me too much that David Gilmour only has one vocal. I certainly wish he had more vocals, but it's an album that's very personal to Roger Waters, so I can see why David Gilmour's participation is minimal. But his solos are great. I do like Not Now, John. I think that's a great track. But, you know, again, I don't think too many people are going to be surprised that it's not higher on my list. Number 9 is going to be Piper at the Gates of Dawn, the psychedelic masterpiece that was recorded at Abbey Road Studios at the same time the Beatles were recording Sgt. Pepper. And you can hear some of the influences. Not only can you hear some Beatles influences on Piper at the Gates of Dawn, but on Sgt. Pepper you can also hear some Pink Floyd influences a little bit, because they were mingling in the studio and kind of eavesdropping on what the other band was doing. I think Syd Barrett was a very gifted songwriter. I love tracks like Flaming, which is just very innocent. It's got a great melody. I love Astronomy Domini. I love Bike, the way that ends with just kind of that eerie mechanical cackling or whatever it is. I enjoy Lucifer Sam. Just some really great moments on that album, and you really can see the brilliance of Syd Barrett and really the tragedy of it all, that was as high a peak as he ever got as a songwriter. His first album, The Madcap Lapse, has got flashes of it, but nowhere was it on full display like it was with Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Number 8, I'm going to go with Division Bell, the second post-Roger Waters Pink Floyd album. And I think Pink Floyd, obviously they incorporated Richard Wright more into the band. He's actually got a vocal on that album, which I always thought was one of the shames of Pink Floyd, is that they didn't involve, after a certain point, after Dark Side of the Moon, they stopped getting Richard Wright to do vocals, and his vocal participation and involvement really dropped off after Dark Side of the Moon. It was almost minimal, so I'm glad that he gets a vocal on this track. I love What Do You Want From Me? I think Keep Talking is great. Just so many good moments on Division Bell, and I think from start to finish, it is so much better than Momentary Lapse of Reason. And I think they learned the lessons that most critics, the things that most critics took them to task for on Momentary Lapse of Reason, I think they corrected for on Division Bell, and it's really a solid and enjoyable album. And for me, that's really, truly the last Pink Floyd studio album. I'll always consider it their last studio album. Number 7, I'm going to go with More. Another soundtrack, but I think it's way more enjoyable than Obscured by Clouds. I love Cirrus Minor with the way that just opens up, and it's just so pastoral and melancholic, and is that a word, melancholic? But I just love the keyboard in that. I love the melody. I think, there's so many just sublime moments on that album. I think Cymbeline is a great track. The Crying Song, it's an album that you can listen to from start to finish, and that really, I think, is a golden period for Pink Floyd before they made it to Dark Side of the Moon, when they were really trying to reestablish themselves and get out of Syd Barrett's shadow. This was the second album that they'd recorded after technically, Syd Barrett was the leader and driving force in the band. And I don't know, I think it's a solid album all the way through, and I do enjoy it a lot. Number 6, I'm going to go with The Wall. Some people might rank this lower. It seems like the more the time goes on, the lower people regard The Wall, but it's just a great concept album. I think that it is so interesting that it's so different from Animals, which was just released 2 years before. They're back to tight, concise songs, and there's some singles on there. I just love the way the narrative flows. I think there's some really hard rocking moments. David Gilmour shines. Unfortunately, Rick Wright, obviously he was on his way out of the band. There's not too much of him on here. I really would have liked more of his involvement. I know there were circumstances which dictated why that didn't happen, but when Pink Floyd was truly on top of their game, it was when all 4 members were contributing not only to the playing, but also part of the songwriting, composition of the songs. But I just, so many, my favorites would probably be, I love the In the Flesh, that and the first track, and then the Reprise. I love Young Lust. I really like, obviously, Comfortably Numb, but I like the beginning where there's Hey You, and then Is There Anybody Out There? I enjoy the ending. I think The Trial just shows how theatrical Roger Waters and animated Roger Waters could be with his voice. But just really a lot of great moments. It's an album that I can go back to time and time again and still appreciate and enjoy quite a bit. It might have been when I was in not college, I was in high school when I really got into that, and I used to listen to it in my car all the time, and saw the movie on VHS, and just really was kind of overwhelmed by all of that. So I still got a soft spot for The Wall. Number 5, I'm going to go with Atom Heart Mother, and really on the strength of the title track alone. Just that whole first side is just a great suite. I know Pink Floyd don't regard it all that highly anymore, but there's just something about it. It's a great progressive rock track, and it's just so different from anything that they had tried before. And in spots, maybe it falls a little flat, but I do enjoy it. There's a choir on there, which you'd never heard before or since, I don't believe, not that I can recall anyway, on a Pink Floyd album. It's just got an interesting melody that runs through it. I like it a lot. I even like the stuff on side 2. I like If. I like Summer 68, I like Fat Old Son, and I even like Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast at the end. There's some interesting things going on there. And it entertains me. I can put it on, I can enjoy it, appreciate it for what it was. It's just one more step towards metal and Dark Side of the Moon. Number 4, speaking of metal, is going to be Metal. Just what a great leap forward, not only in terms of songwriting, but in terms of their proficiency in writing and performing extended suites. Atom Heart Mother was the first attempt at doing a side-long suite, and they really nailed it with Echoes. Echoes is such a great progressive rock track, and just listening to it all the way through, that middle section where you just feel like you're underwater and there's all the strange sounds coming at you from different directions. Just got a creepy, eerie feel to it. And just, I love the fact that you've got David Gilmour and Richard Wright harmonizing on the vocals like they do so wonderfully. Their voices complement one another. I think One of These Days is a great album opener. I like just everything about the first, well, maybe not so much Seamus. If I could get rid of any track on there, it would be Seamus, but Fearless is great. I even like Saint-Tropez. I think that's kind of a nice little, again, it's different than anything else Roger Waters would ever write. Number 3 album, I'm going to go with Animals, Pink Floyd's darkest album. It is a couple of tracks that were originally going to be the follow-up to Dark Side of the Moon, and then that kind of fell apart and they went in a different direction. Gotta Be Crazy, and the album that, or the track that was eventually Sheep, Raving and Drooling. But just there's such a sinister feeling about the whole thing. I mean, you've got, sort of takes you off guard at first because you've got Pigs on the Wing, which is very gentle and acoustic, and it's a rare Pink Floyd love song. And then you get right into Dogs, and it's just, I mean, such a great showcase for David Gilmour's guitar playing, and Pink Floyd with the vocoder, with the dogs barking, and the eerie keyboard that just sort of keep you on edge. It's a very dark sounding record. The themes are very dark. Pigs, 3 different ones, carries it forward even more. And then Sheep is just such a dark, especially when it gets into that middle section with the biblical, I forget which psalm it is, but they sort of manipulate is it the 34th psalm, or I'm not clear which psalm it is, but where you just got that vocal where the sheep are rising up against the dogs and the pigs, and it's just the keyboard itself is so, the effect of that keyboard just is so menacing in that track, and the thumping bass line, everything about it, it's just such a highlight of Pink Floyd's discography, that track. And then things quiet back down and you get the reprise to close out the album of Pigs on the Wing. Just a really, really great album. Now, number 1 and number 2, actually the top 3 for me were kind of difficult because I really regard all 3 of those albums so highly, and it's so hard to pick. But number 1 and number 2, depending on my mood, they can bounce back and forth. But for the purpose of this list, my number 2 is going to be Dark Side of the Moon. Now, there's nothing I can really say here about Dark Side of the Moon that hasn't been said before, but Pink Floyd just totally nailed it. They totally nailed the concept of all the stresses, all the pressures and the weight that come to bear on all of us, the things that really could cause us to, lose our mind or disengage from reality. Roger Waters, his lyrics are so spot on. Everybody's contributing. You've got, Richard Wright doing some great keyboard things, especially on Breathe. Just the contributions that he made there. Great Gig in the Sky is just a great piano melody that he did there. And then the great Claire Torrey with her vocals. Nick Mason, just totally, his drum fills on Time. It's just so perfect what Nick Mason contributes to this album. And probably never more does he really, I guess, kind of do the Nick Mason thing. I mean, it's his drums are just so clearly Nick Mason, and it's probably the highlight for me anyway, highlight of his work as a drummer for Pink Floyd. You've got David Gilmour, who never sounded kind of so at ease and soft and reassuring and just perfect in his vocals. You got the great tracks, you got Money, you got Time, you got the ending suite of Brain Damage and Eclipse. It's Us and Them. So many great moments. Pink Floyd is firing on all cylinders, and it is such a great, cohesive album. Number 1, by process of elimination, is going to be Wish You Were Here. In some ways, it's a tribute to Syd Barrett. Pink Floyd kind of atoning for the way things ended with Syd Barrett. And the pressure was on to follow up a great album like Dark Side of the Moon. How do you follow up a masterpiece like that? And I think they did it brilliantly. I know the recording sessions didn't go all that well, and originally they were going to include Raving and Drooling and Gotta Be Crazy on side 1, and then Shine On You Crazy Diamond on side 2, but Roger Waters vetoed that, and I think it works so well. You've got all the best things about Pink Floyd. You've got Richard Wright adding his perfect keyboard melodies and textures. You've got David Gilmour writing guitar riffs, and that signature beginning riff, or the notes that he plays at the beginning of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, that are just so perfect and so haunting and so beautiful. The audio verite, like for Welcome to the Machine, and then the way that Have a Cigar segues so interestingly into Wish You Were Here with the radio, and then you've got the kid playing along on the acoustic guitar to the radio that transforms it into a song, and then you're back into the next 5 parts of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, or 4 parts, whatever it is. But just the way that Shine On You Crazy Diamond perfectly bookends that album. It was an album that it took me a while to really appreciate. When I first heard it, I was expecting like a sequel to Dark Side of the Moon. I was expecting it to be like Dark Side of the Moon, and of course, it's really nothing like Dark Side of the Moon, but it has its own identity. And for me, I could listen to it over and over and over again and never get tired of it. So anyway, that's my Pink Floyd list. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your comments. What is your list? How do you rank the top 15 albums? Is there anything you disagree with? And it's okay if you do, because really everybody's got their own, I wouldn't begrudge anybody if you ranked a certain album higher than I did, or if your number one's different from mine. That's perfectly okay, but this is my list, and thanks for watching.